Hi, can I get a quad long shot grande in a venti cup, half calf double cup, extra hazelnut, extra toffee nut, extra caramel drizzle, no foam, extra whipped cream, and can I get that with less ice? Fast food has touched every corner of the world, including most of our intestines. For the most part, compared to our food scarce history, we now eat meals fit for kings. Especially the case in North America, our diets have irreversibly been changed by the prevalence and ease of access to high sugar-rich foods. And while we understand the general principle that these foods in excess can increase our risk of diabetes and obesity, as young adults, in general, we tend to underestimate our risk for these diseases. However, it's a much lesser known fact that these diseases have the capability of slowly rotting away our brains. Alzheimer's disease significantly interferes with our ability to keep up with daily functioning by interfering with our language capabilities, recalling recent events, dysregulating our mood, and in the later stages, completely stripping us of our independent motor abilities such as walking. In the last 3 decades, Alzheimer's disease prevalence in the world has grown by 148%, highlighting a pressing concern for our well-being. So how exactly do these sugars hijack our cognitive functioning? Well, to understand how, let's first understand our patterns of eating and how this can all go wrong. Our patterns of eating first begin when the stored glucose in our body, glycogen, decreases. This initiates the release of a neurotransmitter called NPY, which promotes our food-seeking behavior. And in our modern, predatorless environment, this would involve a short walk to the fridge. Once we eat, the carbohydrates enter our system and the glucose in our blood increases. This naturally triggers the release of insulin from our pancreas, which begins the uptake of glucose into our cells and later is involved in the storage of that glucose. And so the cycle continues. But how does this all go wrong? Well, we find it extremely difficult to stop ourselves when it comes to these sugars. In our evolutionary history, food was scarce, energy was scarce. And so whenever we were presented with any kind of sugar, we would eat as much of it as we could. So now in our modern environment, with the ease of access to these sugars, we find it extremely hard to stop. Think of that one last French fry. You can't help but eat it, right? So this may seem in the short term like not a big problem, but excessive sugar for prolonged periods of time in our blood can be extremely problematic. Prolonged sugar over a long period of time causes our pancreas to continually increase the insulin secretion. And the more and more signals that come from insulin for uptake of sugar into our cells causes the cells to eventually stop listening. This is called insulin resistance. Now, when our cells are resisting the uptake of sugar, this leaves all of this excess sugar in our blood. This causes your body to enter a state of hyperglycemia, or extreme sugar. Remember, sugar is important. It's a very important energy source for us. However, excessive amounts of sugar in our blood pushes the cells in our body and especially our brain into overworking. This is characteristic of the cognitive decline and the eventual physical trauma in the brain associated with Alzheimer's disease. So, what can you do about your sugar intake? How much sugar is too much? Well, Canada Heart and Stroke recommends that of all the calories you eat in a day, only 10% should be dedicated to sugars. So if you eat about 2,000 calories, that would mean that's 12 teaspoons of sugar or 48 grams. Now you're asking, 12 teaspoons? Yeah, I definitely got that. But let me put it into perspective. Your favorite iced caramel latte sits at about 44 grams of sugar. That's almost your entire recommended intake squeezed into one tiny little cup. So suffice to say, we're much better off prioritizing natural sugars from fruits and vegetables. Indeed, past research shows that making these dietary changes in the long term to restricting your sugar can decrease your risk for Alzheimer's disease by up to 50%. So all this to say, I encourage you to evaluate your dietary habits, and I also encourage you to skip out on the extra caramel on your next coffee. Thank you very much.